States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing and join the board in a moment of silence as we honor our veterans, our first responders, and our active military. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third Wednesday of October. The second Wednesday of October. It's been a long month. Normally not a date that we would have a public hearing on, but tonight we have 4 hearings. So we're going to go in order of receipt, so we'll ask for the first item to be called.
Application of NYU Langone Hospital to amend the approval decision of the Board of Trustees dated September 21st, 2011, and filed in the office of the village clerk on September 30th, 2011, to permit the relocation of the outpatient radiation oncology program to the basement level of the existing Research and Academic Center building located at the property known as 101 Mineola Boulevard, Mineola, New York, known and designated on the Nassau County Land and Tax Map as Section 9, Block 418, Lots 71, 73, 128, 129, 130, 156, and 160.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbons.
Yes, Mayor. The Nassau County Planning Commission has reviewed this application. It has not requested any modifications, and it has recommended local determination. And I would ask for a resolution declaring this a unlisted action under CEQA.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Trustee Salaski. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Sartori. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. O'Keefe, affidavits of mailing?
Yes, we have.
Received. Great, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we have a number of hearings this evening. The format of the hearing is we'll have a presentation from the applicant. At the conclusion of that presentation, please, when you approach the podium, make sure that you state your name clearly, an address, and your relationship to the applicant. At the conclusion of the presentation by the applicant, the board will interact with the applicant and or their experts, and then at which point we'll open it up to public comment. And then once again, we ask the applicant to take any notes or make any comments, any questions that may be brought up, and then answer them. And so we'll keep doing that until the board is satisfied and the public is satisfied that all questions have been answered. So with that, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Kathleen Deegan Dixon. I'm a partner in the law firm of Forcelli Deegan Tirana, LLP, located at 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard in Uniondale. I'm here this evening on behalf of NYU Langone Health, which we have an application to relocate and consolidate NYU's existing radiation oncology program and treatment program to the property at 101 Mineola Boulevard, which currently and will continue to house NYU's Research and Academic Center. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you a copy of the exhibits that are up, just hand copies, so that you can have them up close.
Thank you.
And also, this afternoon, and I apologize for the lateness of it, we submitted a letter dated October 16th, 2024, from VHB, Patrick Lenahan of VHB, with our parking study and conclusions of VHB. Pat Lenahan is here this evening also to walk you through their findings and conclusions and to answer any questions that you might have. So, as mentioned, we're here this evening seeking to amend the special permit that was granted to Winthrop University Hospital on September 21st, 2011, which authorized the construction of the Research and Academic Center, which I will refer to here and there as the RAC or RAC building. That was completed in 2015. Part of our application this evening is also to seek permission from the Board of Trustees to lease or license 50 parking spaces, additional parking spaces in the Harrison Avenue parking garage. We'll talk about that as we go through the presentation a little bit. So the purpose of the application is for the consolidation of the various outpatient radiation oncology treatment areas that are located within the hospital and on the campus of NYU Langone in Mineola right now. The proposal is to relocate those to the lower level of the RAC building, which will displace a certain number of parking spaces. And then also in that displacement will be creating additional demand for parking. So the total amount of parking relief that we are seeking is for 87 parking spaces. The additional square footage is approximately 12,400 square feet. As mentioned, currently that 12,400 feet is sort of feathered throughout the campus. So there's not a plan to increase patients or staffing for this location. It's really just gathering all of the various spaces, putting them into one new state-of-the-art, one-stop shopping, if you will, radiation oncology center. The goal is, as NYU's Langone's goal is always, to improve the overall patient experience. It's going to have the new machines that do things like CyberKnife and other radiation oncology uses that are world-class and known, really they're leaders throughout the industry and the medical industry on these type of treatments. So they'd like to have this space now reflect the world-class nature of the treatments that they're providing. The existing lower level of the 4-story RAC building contains the parking garage for the premises. Portion of this area will be converted to new clinical space. It'll result in the relocation of 37 parking spaces and will generate the need for an additional 50 parking stalls. So as mentioned, there's a deficiency of 87 parking stalls. Valet services will be provided for all patients and visitors to the site, and that'll be any time it's open. There will be valets on duty. And then employees and staff of the new radiation oncology or the consolidated radiation oncology department will be required to park in other nearby NYU Langone parking areas. Specifically, there's a building at 222 Station Plaza, which is directly across First Street from the RAC building. And then the future, we call it the future north lot. It's located on First Street, 1 block west of the building. So that's where the prior professional residence building was that's been demolished. That's going to be, after the construction is complete, will be a new parking area for, with 47 parking spaces. In a few minutes, Pat Lenihan, our traffic engineer from VHB, will go into more detail on this. And although you'll see from his report, from Pat's report and from his testimony tonight, the conclusions are that the existing parking capacity in the 222 building and the new north lot will more than accommodate any new parking demand and displaced parking demand on the site. Despite that, we would still like to seek that 50 space license from the village for the Harrison Avenue, just to give us a little cushion in case, you'll have, if every space is not taken, somebody still thinks there isn't a parking space. We want to make sure that there's an ability to accommodate any potential staff parking that's needed so that it will not take up any patient parking or cause overflow onto the streets in the area. So currently, NYU Langone treats approximately 120 patients per day in the radiation oncology practice. And then in addition to that, there's another 50 to 60 patients per day that are consultations with the physicians. Patients are scheduled throughout the day between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. And there are approximately 35 current employees that will be relocated to the new space. So as I mentioned earlier, this is not intended to increase demand and increase patient capacity. There are no plans at this time to increase the number of employees. It's really just going to be moving everybody into one spot. With that, I'd like to introduce Pat Lenahan to discuss the parking in the area and the conclusions of his report. I also want to mention I do have with me this evening Michael Glogowski from Canon Design, who is the architecture firm that's doing the design for the project. So if there are any questions in that regard, and then also Angelo Leno from VHB, who's the project engineer on the matter, is available also for further questions. So let me turn it over to Pat for now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pereira, members of the Board of Trustees. My name is Patrick Lenahan. I am the Director of Transportation at VHB's Hauppauge Office, 100 Motor Parkway.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. VHB's Transportation Department, my team was brought into the project to evaluate the potential impacts to parking of the proposed relocation of the outpatient radiation oncology facility to the lower floor of 101 Mineola Boulevard. Kathleen mentioned, and I'll mention it as well, the activity associated with this operation is already there. The spaces that are used are spread throughout the hospital, but the patient load, the staff load, the traffic associated with that, the parking associated with that, is already at the hospital. So when we look at parking in this instance, it's all about how do we handle that parking locally in these buildings, 101 Mineola and 222 Station Plaza, with the help of perhaps 50 spaces at the Harrison Avenue parking garage, which I don't think we really need, but I think is a good hedge. And the hospital would like to seek those 50 spaces. As we said, the hospital owns 101 Mineola Boulevard and 222 Station Plaza. They're operated by NYU. It's NYU personnel in those buildings. With the relocation of the facilities into the basement of what I'll call the 101 building, the parking provided in that building will be reduced from 59 spaces to 22 spaces to facilitate the space itself and some changes associated with the valet operation. So in terms of the operations, the patients would arrive at the site on a fixed schedule. It's by appointment. They would see the valet personnel, and the valet personnel would take them across the street to the 222 building. So my office prepared a letter, October 16th, with our findings. And of course, one of the things we did was look and see what the parking load in those two buildings are now. And there is a table on the second page with the existing parking occupancy. And I'm going to throw myself on my sword a little bit, and I apologize, but there is a typo in my table. And I wanted to call it out so as not to confuse. The third column, total observed parking, there's a 165 number in parentheses, which represents or should represent the total parking in those two buildings right now. That number should be 181. So I apologize. Every once in a while they get me. So we went out there on a Thursday, a typical day, according to NYU, and we counted the number of parked. First, we confirmed the number of stalls in each building, and then we counted the number of parked vehicles every hour for the entire day, and that's what's represented in that table. And what we come up with is a peak of 103 parking stalls, 103 parked vehicles, excuse me. So we have 103 parked vehicles in 181 parking stalls. So as Ms. Deegan-Dixon explained, the plan is to take the staff that's in the 101 building move them into the 222 building where they will fit. And in addition, we looked at the schedule of the outpatient oncology radiation lab that'll be in the building. And from that, we conclude that there should be 23 patients at once over the course of the day based on the schedule. If those 23 patients each arrive in their own car, between what is still remaining in the 101 building and remaining vacant in the 222 building, the whole operation will fit within those two buildings. And there will not be any spillover anywhere else. The employees are already parked on campus. They can remain on campus, or they could move to the Harrison Avenue garage. The 50 spaces that we talk about in the Harris Avenue garage are a large cushion for a patient load of what we think is going to be 23. And in addition, there is a lot soon to be constructed at the north end of the campus proper that will have another 37 spaces. So in conclusion, what the analysis shows and the letter concludes and presents is that should this board see its way to grant the variance and the project move forward, there will not be any problems with regard to parking as a result. And I thank you, and I'll take any questions or wait till later.
We'll wait if Ms. Deegan-Dixon is finished, or,
Well, if you have questions
No.
for Mr. Lenahan,
Um,
I just have my conclusions.
okay, so we can start with questions, and it may be for you, Mr. Lenahan, or for somebody else. Number one, is 222 Station Plaza, is it fully occupied?
Yes.
So it's fully, there's no open office space, and even with that, because
I
these numbers.
asked that specific question for the same reason you're asking.
Okay,
And-
so 222 is fully occupied, and even with that, you have anywhere from 25 spots taken up at 7 a.m. to 103 at 2, and back to 62 at 5, which leaves obviously
Correct.
a lot of wiggle room. Okay, so that's important to know, because we wouldn't want to find out that 3 floors are empty, and then next year they're gonna be
Exactly.
full, and
I asked
Okay.
the same question.
great minds think alike. The second question is, and perhaps this is, I don't know if this is for you, the way that our parking garage works at Harrison is we have cards, key cards, that are given to an individual, that they zap in, they zap out. If we were to grant you these 50 additional spots at the Harrison Avenue garage, how would those be given out? Because there is no system where they could be they're not transferable, right? You couldn't give them to a valet and he could just keep using it to get random cars in and out. I could see if it's used for an employee, he comes in the morning, he swipes in, parks his car, at 5 o'clock he leaves, he swipes out. So, you know, the first recourse for patients and for valet is going to be the rack building. The second recourse is going to be 222. The third recourse is going to be the PRB lot, right? And only in an odd situation would any patient cars have to be put into, if ever.
If ever, the intention is, and the proposed operation is to valet all the vehicles into 222. The only folks who would ever go up to the Harrison Avenue garage would be staff.
Right. So no patients.
Correct.
Okay. The other question, I don't know if you know this or if anybody knows this, is will there be any overlap? In other words, since we're consolidating various departments through the hospital campus now, is there anyone, because we already leased 250 spots to the hospital in the Harrison Avenue garage, are there any of those people that already have a pass? Is
don't
there
know.
anyone who's already parking in in the Harrison Avenue garage? I mean, if you get what I'm saying, right? We give out 250 of these. They come in at 7 a.m., they leave. Now, because you said that everyone that, all the employees that are now going to be shifted to here, they are already parking somewhere on the campus. They've already, these are not new employees, these are not additional employees, they are existing employees and doctors and nurses and staff. So where are they parking currently, and are any of them already parking in Harrison Avenue? Do we know that?
So I think NYU might know that, and I have to say this evening that Tony Castellano Kelly was supposed to be here this evening. She called me at about 4 o'clock and is deathly ill with a terrible cold, hopefully not COVID, but she asked if it was okay if she didn't come tonight, and I figured for the benefit of all of us, we'd keep her out of here. Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that. I know, we did discuss, in light of Pat's findings and what we know about the actual parking demand for the current operations, these 50 spaces are probably going to be excess, and we may not need it. And should we even ask for it, because we don't know if we need it? And she said, you know what, parking is a big concern for everybody everywhere in Mineola, and it would give us a nice cushion so that if we do have any swing space, if we're doing repairs in a garage and we need to displace certain employees, we'd be able to have them park in Harrison Avenue. It is, as Pat said, only going to be for employees of NYU. There may be a patient who wants to self-park and maybe is familiar with that area, but they're not going to have our key card. That would be them doing a self-pay kind of thing. So I don't know the answer of who it's going to be, but there was a sense that NYU could use that cushion as a hedge in case there's any movement, or if there's a doctor maybe that one day is going to be doing procedures on this side of the campus instead of on the other, maybe he'll park in one place or she'll park in one place rather than another. But I don't have an inventory of who those cards would be
I'm sure
assigned to.
there's probably going to be some overlap, but perhaps nothing significant. There may be, a handful of people who are already parking in the Harrison Avenue garage who actually happen to work for oncology, and now they're going to continue to work for oncology. It's just so that I have an idea, because there are 551 spots in the Harrison Avenue garage. Currently, NYU Langone leases 250 of them. So this would be an additional 50. So that would bring it up to 300, which would leave still 251 spots open to the general public. And obviously you would pay for these spots,
Right.
which you currently do. And these spots would not be issued in perpetuity. This would be something that we would, have a contract and we would renew from year to year. And if we saw that demand was increasing for our residents, for our commuters, et cetera, that's the current agreement, is that we revisit it. And you may want to revisit it at some point. You may say, hey, we've built additional parking now on the campus. We no longer need 250. We only need 150. We understand that this kind of works both ways. So although you're saying that there aren't going to be any additional employees, you're just moving people around, but if my math is correct, you're building a 12,400 square foot addition to this building. I'm assuming you're replacing more or less 12,400 square feet from somewhere else. What are you going to do in those 12,400 square feet that are now going to be vacated by oncology and they're moving here? And again, I assume you're just not going to build a really nice open space. You're probably going to fill those with offices and people. Where are they going to park?
Well, that space is going to be accommodated by the new parking that either in the Harrison Avenue garage or within the 222 building, because there is enough excess there for employees in 222. Our application and our study was to accommodate this 12,400. Right now, the 12,400 that's scattered throughout, and I don't know if it's really a foot per foot, because I think this space is going to be a little nicer, and it's really kind of disjointed within the existing hospital campus. So, I don't think NYU has an absolute plan of, we're taking this MRI space and we're going to put Dr. Jones and Dr. Smith in there. I think that's something that, there's a certain amount of fluidity within the hospital. As they're doing new projects, they do need swing space to put people in as they're expanding the ED. The demand is not necessarily directly related to the space that's there. People who need medical care, especially when it comes to emergency medical care, people are going to come whether you have a small ED or a big ED. We're trying to make it work both for the hospital and its patients, but also for the community to make sure that, by providing, that's where these extra 50 spaces come in. That, if 50 employees who are parking on campus right now can now be moved to the Harrison Avenue garage, that'll free up more space for people to park,
Yeah.
for
And
patients to come in.
That is my hope, and I will also say this, well, two things. And I'll say this now, and I'll probably repeat it later. We certainly want the message to go back to the hospital that the village of Mineola is very much, the hospital predates the village of Mineola. The village of Mineola was founded in 1906, and the hospital dates to the 1890s. Mineola and Nassau Hospital, as it used to be called, and then, Winthrop Hospital, and now NYU Langone Hospital, are an integral part. We grew up together. And so I do want to, on the record, put to bed this notion that somehow the village is not working with the hospital as it seeks to build a 21st century facility to accommodate an aging population and the demand and the need. We're here, and we hope that you'll take that message back. We want the hospital to be part of that. We appreciate that the hospital has invested and is obviously continuing to invest in expansion. And as much as we love our neighbors to the south, we would love for you guys to do as much as possible to keep your jobs here, your shopping here, and we do recognize that and appreciate that, and want the message to be given that the village is not the enemy, okay? That we're willing, able, as we've demonstrated with the leasing of the 250 spots. People who've been here long enough remember that we have an approved project for an 8-story parking facility at the very next corner that was approved in this room, and that NYU did not build for whatever reasons, and now they're here to seek parking. We understand that economic decisions that have to be made, and certainly we are reaping the benefits of the payment that NYU makes to us every month for those 250 spots. But I will also say that my wish is that it be, just as you said, the last recourse, right, for the use of this space, that it is literally the outlet valve. If everything else fails, that this is going to be the outlet valve. And we'll work on the particulars of how these cards get handed out. And I will also say, and I think that Mr. Lenahan probably agrees, and certainly Mr. O'Keefe agrees, when we come up with the 87 spots, this is based on a formula. It's not based on the use. And as we see here with the 222 building, it's underutilized. So normally it's a mathematical equation, right? We have a certain number of square feet. The code says you have to have this many spots, regardless if it's going to be, a nail salon, a restaurant, or an oncology cybernight facility. So the 87 spots, I think, is probably not realistic in terms of the demand. That's clear by looking at 222, but that's the code.
Right.
And so that's what you're here to do, and so I do appreciate that. And currently, we do have the space in the Harrison Avenue garage. This demonstrates, to me, it demonstrates that NYU is continuing to invest in the village. They are building. They're building an ED. They're expanding the ED currently. They have come to us for a number of permits over the last couple of months and years, so we hope that that continues, and we certainly will continue to work with the hospital in a way that is not detrimental to the quality of life of our neighbors on that part of town. So with that, I know that the Deputy Mayor has some questions, and so I'll pass it over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you, guys. To the mayor's point, I know that you guys are kind of working with an old campus and trying to make it modern. So we are here to help you and work with you to make it the best it be for you, as well as for us and for our residents and all those who come here. But parking is definitely a sensitive subject here in Mineola. It's at a premium, and we have to really be delicate about all the decisions we make. So I appreciate your study. I do agree that it's probably accommodated in here. I am a little concerned about the fact that we're consolidating 12,000 feet from other locations, and that down the road, whatever does go into those locations will create another parking issue. And if they're currently in the main building of the hospital, maybe it won't be at this board, and then it just creates a bigger problem. So I'm just a little bit concerned, but I do think that the way you spelt it out, it does accommodate it. My big question is, who else is in that building? What other tenants are in that building? Is it only research, or are there
101.
some, in 101, excuse me. Is it only
Yes.
research?
It's only NYU Langone, it's research, and I guess there's some administrative offices
So
in there
there's
as
no
well, but
patients in that building? There's no
No.
patients that come there and park in and out?
Currently, no. No, currently it's just the RIC. So, do you want to?
Is there a diabetic center in, like a diabetic doctors in there?
I don't believe so, not
Okay.
currently.
Okay, okay, because I was just concerned about other
Yeah.
patients influx and then using that garage too, and then how's the valet work?
So if I could just, and I didn't really drill down on it too much, but the, having the valet service here, I think, is going to be a very key part to this. There are going to be 22 spaces that remain on this site. Those will be used by the valet first. I think Pat Lenahan touches on it in the report, that a valet system is generally a more efficient parking system because you can put more cars there. So while we have 22 parking spaces, chances are we'll be able to accommodate more than 22 on site. And then once those are full, then they'll start parking at 222, and if that gets filled. So I think I understand what you're saying, but I do think that the valet is going to be a key to this. It's something that we're happy to commit to a condition of an approval, that's something that during their normal operating hours, that the valets are always there, because I do think that's going to be a major key to this.
I agree, and that's why I
Yeah.
asked there were other patients, because then you would have to make sure the valet accommodated all of the other facilities in there using, the other practices in there using valet, because if you were blocking spots, because valets don't necessarily use the lines, you
Right.
have to accommodate valet for all of the building versus just that one floor. So that's fine. I think if the logistics work out, especially with the housing garage and the key cards, I do think Harrison has to be the spot for employees. It has to be a consistent employee-only kind of thing
Yeah.
with the card system. But I'm sure we could work out the logistics of that with you. And other than that, I think it would be fine. So thank you very much for spelling
Good.
this out for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Casado.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening.
Hi.
So what's the basic time frame here for demolishing, reconstruction, putting in new equipment? We're talking about a year and a half, or?
I would defer to Michael, but approximately a year and a half?
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah.
About a year and a half? Okay, thank you. That's it, Mayor.
That's it. Okay. Trustee Clark.
Good evening. In this facility, do they still do lectures, and are they having, is there classroom activity going on? What's an unusual day?
So if I could ask Michael to come up. Michael is with Canon Design. He's very familiar with the inner workings of, or at least the space uses of the RAC building.
Good evening. Michael Glogowski. I'm the project manager with Canon Design at 300 East 42nd Street in New York. Currently, I mean, we are just focusing pretty much on the basement and on the second floor. But the rest of the building is pretty much research. So the diabetes center that you were referring to.
Diabetic center is.
Yeah, I believe that is just a research center. I know that we have labs there.
Well, from
on-
experience, I can tell you, I've taken a patient there. That's why I know that.
Okay.
Now, it was a year or two ago.
It was,
So I don't
yeah,
know if they
yeah.
moved, which is why I asked the
Yeah,
question.
no. I believe NYU did relocate some of the patient facilities to another building that was constructed.
Okay.
So some of the patient area, that used to be patient areas, were turned into basically administrative offices.
Gotcha.
So that hasn't changed. So it actually decreased probably, you know, the population coming into the building at that point. We do have a lecture hall in the building that's related to the Long Island School of Medicine. However, I don't know how often that, I unfortunately don't.
How big is that hall?
That's on the ground floor.
It's probably about
I
this
can
size.
try to find out the
It's not that
square
much
footage.
bigger than this. It's a-
Yeah, it's not, it's,
I'm
yeah,
trying
it's
to
not,
find out how
it's
many-
not
how
a,
many
it's not a
people come in.
huge room. Yeah, it's probably around the size of this space. It's not a huge space.
And then that's it for that would be the only room where you have visitors.
Correct, yeah. The upper floors are just student areas, classroom areas for students and, you know, whatever doctors are teaching.
And where would these visitors park?
Well, so that's the existing condition, so what
Yeah.
we were talking about tonight is only the change in what this project will change. So wherever they're parking now, it'll feather into our program. So if they're employees or they're students, you know, maybe students get the key cards. And I have to apologize, if Tony was here, she would be able to give better answers, and, but, you know, the existing conditions in the building are going to remain what they are and as they were approved prior. So, you know, to the degree that there are visitors coming to the building, they could utilize the valet as well. If they're students or employees, they would utilize the employee parking, that same plan that we're proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Trustee Solosky?
I just have one question. The future north lot, when do you see that being completed, where you will have these additional spots?
I've been told that it should be completed before the end of the year.
Before the end of this year?
Of this year, by the end of 2024.
And is that lot going to be totally reserved for patients in the oncology unit, or is that open to people coming to the ER?
It's going to be restricted, so valets can go in there. It's self-parking, it's not gonna be for self-parking of the public. So it'll either be employees or valet overflow. And then if anybody wants to self-park, they'll have an ability to self-park in any of the municipal fields that are around, I guess in the excess of 222. But the north lot, the future north lot is really gonna just be restricted to employees and valet parking.
Okay, and then you mentioned lecture halls and classrooms. So at certain times during the day, certain days of the week, we could have a group coming into this building that needs parking. We're bringing in medical students, we're bringing in outside interest into these lectures and presentations that are being made.
So that's already captured by the counts that were done, because that's not changing. So if they're there now, they will be there tomorrow when this is done.
Okay,
So-
but they could avail themselves to the valet parking that the patients are also trying to use?
Yeah, presumably, you know, anybody, I don't think it's going to be, show me your appointment for the radiation oncology. You know, right now, I suppose that they self-park on-site or in any of the areas around, or maybe already avail themselves of the 250 parking spaces that the hospital rents from the village. I don't think that'll change. I mean, there may be a little shift if somebody has an opportunity to valet park, and they're, you know, employees are not going to be able to take advantage of the valet parking, and I don't think the students will either. I think it's going to be just for visitors and patients.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think, so that everyone understands what goes on at the RAC building, it is the medical school. The medical students are there now. They, presumably, most of them probably walk there because they live somewhere on campus, or they take the train. I've been in that lecture hall, so if lectures are happening, they're happening now. They happened last year, they're gonna happen next year, and they're probably not daily. So I understand that that is separate from this. I do think, you know, for me, what makes me feel relatively comfortable with this is the parking study for 222. I mean, the amount of flexibility that is there, which is right across the street. And, you know, obviously we'll have to work this out in a decision. Valet parking is non-negotiable. The parking garage being the last option is non-negotiable. And the way that the key cards are given out and assigned will be also non-negotiable, which is the way it is done now.
Right.
I was just talking to my parking supervisor, and he basically says, you know, everybody comes in at 7 a.m., they all have their own, and it's identified to a person or to a car. They come in, they can't, you know, walk out and give it to their cousin, and then they come in and give it to their friend, et cetera, or give it to a patient. So it is controlled because we do need to account for those spaces. So, thank you. Does anyone else on the board have any questions? No? Okay, if you don't mind having a seat, I'll open it up to public comment. Anyone in the first row? Second row? Third row? Fourth row? Fifth row? Sixth row? Seventh row? Nobody? Okay, if you don't mind coming back up. So I will say this, you know, my full-time job is a teacher, and I often assign things to my students. I actually had a project due today, and, you know, a lot of students submit stuff at the last minute, you know, with typos too. And so I'm used to that, and normally I take points off for such mishaps. So obviously getting this at 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we certainly wish Tony well, but not having her here, for me, would lead me to want to take some time to digest this and then to reserve decision. But certainly, I am inclined, I will say this, that I am inclined to see that I appreciate that the hospital is investing. This is a large investment, state-of-the-art, and our residents and our neighbors, whether they're from Mineola or surrounding communities, are gonna benefit from this life-saving technology. So I don't see a problem, but I also want to make sure that we have a discussion and that we get some answers to some of the questions that we had regarding the repurposing of the 12,000 or whatever square feet it is, and also if there's any overlap in the current use, if we could get an idea of who's currently using it. And I think we just need to drill down a little further. I think, I speak for the board, that the only concern that we have with this project is the parking. It is not anything else. It's not the building of it. You know, you're gonna work with the building department, with the fire marshal, with the health department. All of those things are beyond our scope. The thing that we are most concerned about, obviously, is parking. And although I do believe that you're erring on the side of caution in terms of the 50, probably won't need the 50 today, but we also need to, you know, the Harrison Avenue garage has a finite number of spots. So we don't want the hospital to come back in 6 months or 6 years and ask for another 50 or another 50, because at some point, we're going to have to say no. And like I said, in a year, you may reevaluate and come back to us and say, I know we agree, but it turns out that here, we have the numbers, we've never used those 50. Can we give them back and get the credit? But, you know, for me, I would vote to close the hearing and reserve decision. Does anyone else have any comments that they'd like to make? Anything else?
I know that it's been expressed to me that NYU is anxious to move this along as quickly as possible. I know you understand that. I have to say for myself, thank you to the board and to the mayor and to your village attorney for meeting with us, talking to us, accommodating us with the hearing on short notice.
Right.
We do appreciate that and do apologize for the late parking study.
Well, at least you didn't say your dog ate it, so.
But you know, a group project, sometimes
Oh, I know. Funny, there was a group project today, and they got a lot of that, Johnny
Yeah.
didn't do his part, and,
Don't use
you
the
know.
name Johnny.
Oh, okay, sorry. I should say Linehan didn't do his part.
So we do hope that that you can make a decision soon,
Well-
and that, conditions, obviously, we will be happy to work with the village. It's going to be a 1.5-year construction project, and I think that during that time, as we negotiate parking with the village, I think that we can hammer out a lot of those things, so.
Okay.
I just
So
wanted-
as you said, from when we first were made aware of this to this night, we moved pretty quickly. And we do
Acknowledge.
have a meeting next week, and we do have a meeting, first Wednesday of November. So I would expect that at the very latest by the first week of November, we would have a decision if we get the information that we are requesting in a timely manner. So we're not looking to hold you up, but at the same time, we also don't want to make rash decisions without, giving it some thought and working with my parking supervisor who knows the situation down there intimately and can perhaps even assist the hospital in answering some of these questions, because he literally knows who comes in and out, and he's got all those numbers, and we can flush all that out, okay?
Okay. So I've been taking notes, and to the degree that I want to make sure that we answer all your questions, maybe I could call Mr. Gibbons tomorrow. Just make sure that we don't miss anything and that we can get you answers to all your questions.
Absolutely. Any comments? Any more comments? Okay.
Isaac, when are you, I know you're saying a 1.5 years to build it. When are you looking to start building it?
Tomorrow.
Yesterday.
As soon as we have the approvals in place.
I wish all of our developments happen like that.
Yes, that's for the next presenter. I will also say that, using the teaching analogy, oftentimes the students who submit things late are the ones who the next day say, hey, did you grade it yet? Did you grade it yet? So can't have it both ways. Anyway, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing and reserve decision.
Motion.
Motion by trustee Clark. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Sartori. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you very
luck,
much.
and we wish
Thank you.
Tony all the best, and hopefully she gets well real soon. There's a great hospital in Mineola that she can go to, and
She doesn't need a hospital.
if she needs it. Hopefully she won't need it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to take a 3-minute break, give an opportunity for the applicant to vacate, and give a break for our stenographer, and we'll be right out for the next hearing. Be right out.